If it wasn't obvious from the content of some of my last videos, I've been re-listening to the Beckwin novels recently, and it's really given me a lot to think about in terms of Warhammer lore and where the 40k setting might be going. So I wanted to have a little chat about the King in Yellow, who he is, what that could mean, what he's up to, etc. So throughout the Beckwin novels, she hints very heavily at the fact that the King in Yellow could be a lost Primarch. And then it's revealed at the end of the book, spoilers here, that it's actually Constantine Valdor. At first, I thought that all the Lost Primarch stuff was just something to throw you off the scent of it being Valdor, but the fact that she was mentioning it, I think, literally minutes before we find out that it's Valdor, makes me think that there might be a little bit more to it than that. So, first of all, I just want to have a little think about who the King in Yellow could really be. I've seen a few people say that they think Dan Abnett's going to throw us a massive curveball in the next book, and it won't actually be Valdor. Like maybe it was Valdor at one point, but he's long dead and it's somebody else. Or, Valdor is just a name that the King in Yellow has taken on. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they'd go for such a huge reveal of it being Valdor to then just backtrack and say, oh, actually, no, it's somebody else. I think that'd be really stupid and not something that I think Dan Abnett or Games Workshop would do. So let's assume that it actually is Constantine Valdor. What do we know about Valdor and what might we learn in the next few books? Could he be a Primarch? I know that this has been hinted at in several books, and there's lots of theories on the internet about him being a sort of the 21st Primarch. And I think there could be something in that, even if he's not a Primarch in the regular sense. He may be something akin to a Primarch, like the Thunder Warrior to the Primarch Space Marines, if you like, an early Primarch prototype. I've seen a few people say that he's the Emperor's true-born son. I don't know a huge amount about that theory, but I've heard that somewhere in one of the books, um, somebody talks about the Emperor killing Valdor's parents. So if that's true, that would pretty much kill that story off, unless they were his adopted parents. But I know that there's a part of the story where the Emperor literally stops the crusade to unify Terra and marches sort of hundreds or thousands of miles in the wrong direction to go and get Valdor because he's found that he's there. So there's clearly something special about Valdor that's yet to be revealed. I've also heard a theory that Valdor could be a piece of the Emperor, like the Emperor is actually a trinity. So there's Valdor, the Emperor that we know as the Emperor, and Malcador, and they each form a different part of this whole. That's quite an interesting theory. I don't know whether I believe it at the moment. I haven't seen enough evidence to support that, but I'd be very excited if it went down that way. I wouldn't be gutted if Games Workshop decided to go in that direction with it. So we know that the King in Yellow is Valdor. I think there's still something else to be revealed about him, about his nature, exactly where he's come from, who he is. But what's he up to? So Ravener is pretty certain that he's trying to learn the Emperor's true name, and there's a theme throughout the Eisenhorn and Ravener and Beckwin books, particularly in the Beckwin books, about the power of words and in particular names. So, is he trying to kill the Emperor? Is he trying to attack him somehow? Has he fallen to chaos? I think that's incredibly unlikely because we're always told that the Custodes can't be corrupted, they can't fall to chaos. And I think if there's anybody in the 40k setting who we can be pretty certain would never fall to chaos, it would be Valdor and perhaps Gilliman. So I don't think that he's trying to learn the Emperor's name to kill him in a bad way. That sounds a bit daft, but he may be trying to learn his name so that he can kill him to release him from the throne. I think I spoke in my theory video about whether the Emperor could come back to the 40k setting, about him sort of dying to release his soul into the war to fully ascend to godhood and then take form as an avatar of the Emperor or as a shard of the Emperor or something like that. That may be something that Valdor is up to. Like he's trying to release the Emperor from the bonds that he's in on the Golden Throne. So why is he creating an army of blanks? Well, I wasn't sure about this one at first, and then I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole in my own mind. So I was thinking, what do blanks do? Blanks block psychic or warp power. So why is he trying to create an army of blanks? Is it so that he can go and attack the Emperor and he's shielded from the might of the Emperor's psychic ability? Or is it because we all know, or at least I think this is the case, if the Emperor just dies, then all the warp energy and everything will just flood onto Terra, and it'll just destroy Terra, and it'll create a warp rift even bigger than the Eye of Terror, and everything chaos and warp related will just suddenly tear into the universe and rip it to pieces. So is he creating the army of blanks to take to Terra with him, to nullify the warp and to essentially plug that hole long enough for the Emperor to die and sort of ascend to godhood? Or is the plan to let the Emperor die? And I think I'm right in saying the Emperor is a true perpetual. So a lot of people have said you just let the Emperor die and he comes back. But that's always presented the problem of, but whilst he's doing the coming back part of it, the regenerating, um, the warp will just flood through the rip in the throne room and onto Terra and into the material universe. So is Valdor's plan to go and kill the Emperor using his true name, allow him to regenerate and reform, and whilst that's happening, this army of blanks is in the throne room or in the palace on Terra, holding back the tides of the warp by their blankness, their nullness? I think that would be quite an interesting story arc for them to go down, and especially the fact that he'd have to convince the custodies and the High Lords of Terra to let that happen, or he'd just have to defeat them. He'd have to lay siege to Terra, which would be quite an interesting sort of mirror to the Horus Heresy. So there's a new siege of Terra, but it's Valdor coming to try and rescue the Emperor. He's attacking the Imperium to try and save it, and that would create a hell of a conflict with Guilliman and the High Lords. Although I'm not even sure where this actually sits in the current timeline. I think it might be before Guilliman's woken up again. But I dare say there'll be some sort of time shift which converges these two timelines. They'll go into the City of Dust and come out a few hundred years in the future, where they're at the same point in time as Guilliman. I'm convinced of that. So that's what I think could be a decent way for Games Workshop to go with that. He goes to Terra. He's trying to kill the Emperor to save him, and the army of blanks are there to nullify the warp, to hold back the tide until the Emperor can come back and do what he needs to do, fully reformed and regenerated and powerful. That, of course, presents the problem I talked about in one of my previous videos about whether you could ever have him on the tabletop in that case. So I think it's more likely that Valdor is trying to release the Emperor into the warp to help him to ascend to that godhood and free him of his physical constraints so that he can go on fighting chaos in the warp. But anyway, those are just a few rambling wonderings that entered my mind the other day. I'd absolutely love to know what some of you guys think, and if there's any evidence that I've missed, because I certainly haven't read all the books in the Black Library. So yeah, if there's anything that you guys know of that either destroys those theories or backs it up, I'd absolutely love to hear about them.